Welcome to the Poetry Podcast with A, an Amber Michelle's work production. In this series, The Pop-Up, our mission is to pop up in the community to connect with writers, authors, and poets. Christina Santiago, thank you so much for joining The Pop-Up today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you are the journalist by day, poet by night. I love that little phrase you use in your little bios and stuff. So tell me just a little bit more about you as a writer. It seems like you're constantly writing throughout your days. What does that look like for you? Like, how would you describe yourself as a writer in terms of just like everything you do on a daily basis?
So I feel like I have two different hats that I wear. As a journalist, I'm writing very conversationally. I'm trying to break down complex topics into something that's really simple and easy to understand in a short amount of time. And I'm also writing for other people's voices. So other people are saying the words that I'm writing. So I have to tailor it to their styles. Whereas in poetry, I usually don't have limits of any kind. And it's my words speaking from my perspective on my behalf, my thoughts and feelings, not just facts. And I'm the one who gets on the mic and says it. So it's just a completely different way of thinking about writing. Like one is writing in service to something else. And for me, writing poetry is writing in service to myself.
That makes so much sense. And I'm sure you connect with one more than the other. Because I know I do, because I really relate to what you just said because of writing storyboards and scripts for videos all the time that are stories that are not my stories that I'm helping someone write, like a story. You know what I mean? So do you connect most with one or the other? Which one would you say? Or do you love them both?
I love them both for different reasons. I feel like they express different parts of who I am. I feel like I am someone who loves to give other people a platform. And so through journalism, I'm able to do that and just kind of step out of the way and help them shine. But then through poetry, it's taking that power back and owning my own story.
Yeah.
Which I feel like for so long, because there was a decade where I didn't write poetry on a regular basis. And for that time, I feel like I was less in tune with my own thoughts and feelings about the world and my own experiences. And getting back into writing poetry has really helped me like settle more into my own body, you know, and really be embodied and empowered and feel like I know who I am.
Mm-hmm. And right now we are sitting in an exhibit that you helped curate. And tell us a little bit, because this podcast, this series is the pop-up. So there's no set location. I go around and you can definitely hear this right now.
Probably.
It is absolutely pouring outside. That's why I'm soaking wet.
It's a torrential downpour right now.
Your hair is wet. You actually wore a raincoat. Smart. But I'm soaked. And I actually love days like this, though.
Yeah.
I love rainy days. And I was walking my dog this morning. I'm going in a little tangent. That's okay. But I think almost every artist has some type of love towards a rainy day.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's just some type of gloom about it. That's what I was thinking. But we kind of thrive in gloom.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to search for yourself and search even harder than on a happy day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? To find those things that make your heart beat or just get you excited.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
And there's like space for that exploration on a rainy day because usually people aren't going out. Although I do think a day like today is perfect to see an exhibit like this, to just walk around in a dry space where it's like quiet other than the rain. You can take your time looking at a piece and reading a poem next to it. A day like today, I think is perfect for being in a space like what we're in right now.
Yeah, where we're popped in it. Yeah. What is this exhibit? Can you tell us a little bit more of where we physically are, the whole place, and then the exhibit itself?
So we are at HJ's Youth and Community Center, which is owned and operated by St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, where I'm on the board, and that's just across the street. This space is what it sounds like. It's used by youth. It's used by the overall community. And the walls are used for local artists to display their work. And the way that this exhibit, which is called The Journey Through, came about, the coordinator of art here knows both Brittany, the visual artist, and me, the poet. She saw that we'd worked together on my book because Brittany did illustrations for my book.
Oh, she did? I
And
didn't
she
connect
said,
that.
yeah, she said, you should do an exhibit here. Like you should do a totally new, different collection here. And Brittany had this collection of work of mostly graphite and some sculptural stuff that's really large scale. And I wrote poems to complement those pieces. And so now they're here. So that was probably a year between when Angie Jennings first said, you guys should do something together in this space. And then when it actually came to life this May.
So beautiful. How did you all connect?
So Brittany knows my publisher of my book. So the publisher of my book, who is also my editor, said, I think some visuals would help break up the poems and the short essays. And so the first person's work that I was sent was Brittany Noriega's. And it struck me immediately, like emotionally, it just hit me right in the heart. And so I didn't want to look at anybody else's work.
Yeah.
So I immediately told MG Salazar, my publisher, Brittany's who I want. Send her the manuscript. If she likes it and she says yes, like I can't wait to see what we do. And part of this is exhibit. There's a section of hallway out there that has illustrations and poems from my book, which are separate from the collection in here and further down the hallway.
Was this the first time that you saw your poems displayed other than your book?
Yes.
How did that feel?
It feels larger than life because it is like life size. Like seeing it on a wall makes it feel even more permanent somehow, even though it won't be on that wall forever. Something about like coming in here just to get a latte because there's a free cafe in this community center. Coming in just to get a latte and seeing someone reading my words and looking at the visuals that go with it. Someone I don't even know. Like there's something really powerful about watching them experience it in like a public way, whereas reading a book feels more private, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like going on stage because I know a lot of people when you were at my book launch and I had an open mic, a curated open mic. It wasn't actually open. It was closed, but a closed mic. You read and there was a lot of people that came up to me and there was multiple people, like everyone hit someone different, but I would say there was 3 to 4 people that had performed that night that I got comments on, and you were one of those people. And I think it's because you're in your book, you're talking about something so vulnerable that not a lot of people write about.
Yeah.
You know? So it was really cool to see people you didn't know connect with your work. And that's just, it's cool to see in person because you're right. The book is private. You don't even know it's kind of that way even on social media. People don't always like your posts. People will see them. I get that so much. I'm like, you saw the post, but you didn't like it? Why? But they'll tell me in person like, oh, that was such a cool piece. But I'm like, oh, it doesn't matter about the likes. I can keep posting and posting because I know even if there isn't a like or a comment, it could potentially hit someone.
Well, it just makes me think we remember the people who come up to us and say something. But if that person is brave enough to do that, how many more people were affected or impacted who just don't feel comfortable saying something? Like, I think we have wider reach than we realize, even if it feels passive and people aren't actively engaging with us. I think more people feel the art than express it to us directly.
Yeah. So since we're sitting in this exhibit, I'm going to have you read a couple of different pieces today. Put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah. I'm down.
But you're good at that.
Thank you.
So I'm curious if you could start by reading something from this gallery work.
Yes.
Because it's new, it's fresh, it's fun.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I want to ask a couple of questions about you writing it.
Yeah.
So how many pieces did you have to write for this exhibit?
Oh gosh, let me look because I don't even
It's
remember. It's
quite a
more than a
few.
dozen.
Yeah.
It's 13. Yep.
Nice. How long did that take you?
So here's the funny thing about this collaboration. At first, Brittany sent me the digital images of all of the visual pieces that were original to this exhibit and just said, I want you to write what you see. Just whatever comes to you, write it down. But I wasn't loving what I was writing. I wasn't feeling like it was capturing what I was seeing. So then I emailed back and said, can you send me just a line or two of what these pieces mean to you? Like, what is your Cliff Notes summary of what you're trying to communicate? And that was perfect. Like, that was all the writing prompt I needed. I wrote all of these pieces in like 2 nights.
Really?
It just
poet by night,
once,
baby.
once I had a little bit of guidance, I could like tap in and connect and felt like I was fully capturing what I was looking at. And what was so exciting on the day that we had our opening reception for this exhibit, Brittany said, I don't want to say much about these pieces. I want people to come bring whatever interpretations they have. But also Christina captured so beautifully what I was trying to express. So I'm just going to let the poems and the visual art speak for themselves.
Oh, that's awesome. So do you have let's have you read your favorite from that now.
Ooh,
kind of
okay.
knowing your background in it.
Okay. I feel like because this exhibit is called The Journey Through, we should read the poem complementing that piece, The Journey Through, which is right over there.
Okay, we'll show it through visuals.
Yeah, we'll show it through video, but it's a large scale
This one?
graphite piece, yes.
Okay.
And it features Cecropia moths. And so that is what the poem speaks to. So this is called The Journey Through. Cecropia moths pack a lot of living into just 1 year. In fact, their entire lives span a 1-year cycle with at least 10 months spent encased in a cocoon. The months they live outside that shell must be spent creating the next generation. Imagine focusing so much of your life slowly growing into who you were made to be. Imagine the trauma of breaking out of your cocoon and taking flight. The grief one must feel giving birth to new life, only to lose your own so shortly thereafter. Cecropia moths pack a lot of living into just 1 year, and they feel every second of it, because the only way to move forward is to take the journey through.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
So they live a year.
Yeah.
Wow. It's kind of like we should all be living like that.
Mm-hmm.
We should all live like we only have 1 year left. You know what I mean? So you can really feel it. Be more intentional. What piece in that poem really connects to you the most, would you say, that's like really hit you in the description of these moths and the way they live their lives?
I think it's that last section, thinking about how they pack a lot of living into just 1 year and they feel every second of it.
Yeah.
Because they know they're on limited time. So much of it is encased. And then when they're out there, their whole mission is to continue the species, find a partner, mate, create new life, and then your life comes to an end. I mean, hopefully for us, for humans, we get to see what that next generation becomes.
Yeah.
They don't. But thinking about being present for what you have, regardless of what that is, I think that's what sticks with me.
Yeah. For me, it was the becoming who you are. Because when you're really trying to find out who you are, it feels like that shell. And it's kind of like, why wait for it? Because sometimes I feel a lot of people get stuck in the version of who they want to be and who they think they are. but you can really be whoever you want to be. And it doesn't matter about your past. Like almost people get stuck in that past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of just being like, this is who I am. This is why I can't change. It's almost like an excuse, but
Mm-hmm.
you can always be that next version of yourself. And it's that piece of just why wait, just break through. That's beautiful. So this exhibit is called The
The
Journey
journey through.
Through.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I think I like when I've given guided tours, I start people with that piece, but then I let them work their way around the room however they feel called to work their way around the room. But then we go down the hallway and end with the large piece that you loved so much, Mother,
Mother.
which is a huge image of the female figure with flowers and plants and all this life.
So you've seen a lot of people come through and see this gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Which piece have you noticed people stop at the most?
Ooh. This piece right here that you loved so much, it's like a female form covering her chest, but then instead of a head, there are like flowers and plants everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to connect with a lot of people.
That seems like art that would be in my bedroom.
Yeah, it's really evocative. There's a piece down the hall that's called Autonomy. And it's a woman's face with all of these symbols of different institutions around her. And then there's something like kind of piercing her throat. And so what I wrote about that is basically no matter what systems are trying to take away your autonomy, you will not be silenced. You can see the fire in the eyes despite like the throat being slashed. Like maybe you can't speak, but you're not being silenced by that.
That's awesome. So when you were writing these pieces, where do you go to write? Like, where do you find your inspiration from? Kind of what's that process for writing? Because this is probably a different process of how you wrote than maybe telling your own story.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe compare the two a little bit, or it could be the same, but I'm just curious if it is different.
I think telling my own story for my book kind of fell out of me without a prompt, right? Like without a visual, without a line or two about what it means. I was just kind of journaling, and then it turned into something that now the world can experience. But what the actual process of writing looked like was very similar. I have terrible handwriting, so I have to type because otherwise I can barely read my own words. And so it was just sitting at a laptop in like a comfy chair or on the couch or in bed and just writing what comes to mind and then editing from there. That's what it looked like to write these pieces for this exhibit and the book. It's just where the inspiration came from was different. Like one came from just sharing my own stories, and the other came from telling the stories that someone else was trying to communicate.
Yeah. There is just a whole on storm going on out there.
I was going to say this, whoever's listening to this and watching this has quite the view and audio experience.
I mean, right when you said that, it was like, boom, like talking about your inspiration. And where those get pulled from. And that's really cool of being able to write at home, because I don't find that to be the case for me. Writing at home seems a little hard just because I like to write around strangers or nature, where at home it's people that know me that can stop in, ask me a question. I'm like, I have to be secluded almost. And my home has my husband, my dog, like needs, you know what I mean? So that's cool that you find so much comfort in your home to write.
Yeah. I will say, so it's often late at night that I write. So like often I'll not be upstairs in the bedroom. I'll be like downstairs on the couch with the laptop, like, and it's dark except for a lamp that I've put on, and I'm just typing away. So I understand needing like some sort of separation or seclusion. But I also...
Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and be like,
yes.
idea?
Yes.
I get those. So
that's how most of the book was.
I do get those. So I guess I do write, but It's only when it's like that surge.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
So so are you a night owl then?
Not always. I feel like I'm one of those weird in between people. I'm not all early morning or all late night. It kind of just depends on the day and what's going on. Working as a journalist, I sometimes work late into the night where I won't get off work until 10:30. So then when I get home, it takes time to decompress. So I won't fall asleep until midnight. But sometimes that means with that awake energy, if something's been rolling around in my brain, I just got to get it out.
Do you ever find that writing for your job and then writing for, let's just say, art or yourself, that you ever feel burnt out? Like you've been writing all day for someone else, that when you go to write for yourself, it's hard. And if you feel that, how do you overcome it?
Sometimes, yes. I would say when it comes to writing for myself, writing for strictly creative, artistic purposes, I don't have a strict practice. Like I don't do pages every day like so many people do, which is great for them. And I think if that works for you, that's wonderful. But I kind of like you have to have some sort of spark or some sort of specific goal or time or deadline. Otherwise, it's just going to be when inspiration strikes. And there are times when I want to do something, but it's not coming out. And it's because I've been writing for 8 hours. But in those cases, I usually don't have a specific project with a deadline. So it's okay if it doesn't come to me in the moment. Like it'll come when it'll come.
Mm-hmm.
But when there is a deadline or a project or a goal or something, then that is kind of the
Motivation.
Driver. Yeah.
Okay, so we both say that a rainy day, it causes a little bit of inspiration, even just to explore art, to dive deeper into that side of ourselves. What would that look like for you? Like if we weren't sitting here today and I just wore this is my rainy day sweater. I was like, I can't. I'm just going all rain today.
Yeah.
But if you did that, what would that look like for you?
I wouldn't be in a cute jumpsuit. I would be. So if we weren't doing this right now, I would probably be at home. I would probably be on the couch under a blanket with the fire going and like listening to music and maybe reading something creative like a poetry collection.
Are you reading something right now?
I just finished a collection from Audre Lorde, which is incredible. I'm not reading any other poetry right now. I'm in a book club with my mom and we're reading like a crime thriller, which I don't read a lot of fiction, to be honest, which you would think working in journalism, I would want to escape. But I love memoir and poetry and things that are called self-help, which I feel like is a little reductionist. But things where people are like sharing their own stories and tools that have helped them get to where they want to be.
Yeah.
That's what I typically read. So I feel like on a day like today, I'd have to go through my own personal library and like see what struck me. But I could absolutely see myself like writing something creative. Just in my notes app is full.
Same.
So many things. Just whipping that out while listening to music and having the fire going. Like that's probably what I would be doing.
That sounds so nice. I want a fire now. Yeah, it's cool. It sounds like you read all different sorts of things. Would you have a favorite genre if you had to choose? Would it be poetry?
Either poetry or memoir. I love people telling their own stories, whether it's in short form or long form. I just think there's something really beautiful about being able to capture your own story and put it down in a way that other people can appreciate. And there's like something about being witnessed that feels powerful.
That makes so much sense for you because when we were just setting up, I was telling you that you are so good with people. It's one of your skills that stands out. And it's funny that you love to read memoir then, because you are this connector. I feel that you're going to a lot of events in town.
Mhm.
You're always grabbing coffee with different people. Why do you feel like that's important to you?
Connection has always been important to me. I mean, I even remember in high school, I gave a talk at a retreat that was talking about a lot of different things, but what it came back to was realizing that I wanted to connect with other people and that I was learning different ways to do that. But when I was working with my teacher on the talk, because it was for school, I went to a Catholic school, it was a religious retreat. She's like, what does this all come down to? Like, you're a theater girl, you do journalism stuff, you want to be a journalist. Like, what is the point? What is your why? Why are you doing all these things?
Mhm.
And the word that we came up with was connection. I think through words and in-person interactions, virtual interactions, like, language is how we connect. So I think it's always been important to me because I've always wanted to feel that relationship with other people. I'm kind of an ambivert. Like, sometimes I get energy from other people, sometimes it takes away, and I need to recharge afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if I had to choose, I lean more in the extrovert than the introvert, because more often than not, it's not depleting. It's energizing for me to talk to other people. So I think it just comes naturally that I want to
Just who
meet
you
people.
are.
Yeah, I just want to be engaged in the community. Like, I care. I want to know what's going on. I want to know who I can support, who's doing cool things, who can I uplift. Like,
Who's your favorite person? I mean, I know there's multiple, but who has been someone that has struck you, that you've connected with, that took you off guard? It could be someone random, someone that connected with you after they read your book, after reading your pieces, you pouring yourself out onto the page.
I mean, the first person that comes to mind when you're talking about, like, who has struck me after connecting with my work in some way, Melissa Ferrer Seville, who we both know, who happens to be Kansas City's first poet laureate.
Hey.
And we're friends, mic drop. But no, she has shared her own experiences with mental illness. And that's what my book talks about, is my experience with bipolar disorder. And so first I got to know her as, like, a poet that I admired and respected. And then I got to know her as, like, a friend that I cared about and who cared for me.
Okay, I want to dive into this.
Yeah.
So you're not from Kansas City.
No.
So how long have you been here again?
It'll be 6 years in October.
Okay, so I would say that's, like, mildly fresh,
Mm-hmm.
especially because you moved here close to the pandemic and those years don't count.
Yeah.
So when moving here, how did you meet these people in this industry that you wanted to meet? Like, was it through Instagram? Like, how did you even see her work?
Yeah. So when I first moved here, it was the end of 2018. I didn't get back into poetry until 2021. And I didn't really start trying to find community in the poetry space until 2022.
Okay.
So the way that I did that was just searching, like, poetry Kansas City on social media. And that's where I found Poetic Underground, a weekly open mic that's now at Blip Roasters in the West Bottoms. And I remember going there in February of 2022. They had, like, just started meeting in person again, and being blown away that all of these incredible poets had been here for years, and I just had no idea because I didn't know the space existed. So it was there that, I don't know if it was Melissa or someone else, but someone advertised a poetry event that she was doing at Anchor Island.
Okay.
And so I went to that Anchor Island poetry event, and she read and performed, and I was, like, mesmerized.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny. Like, once you start getting connected to a community, you start seeing some of the same faces over and over again. So finally I like added her on Instagram. I think I sent a DM being like, if you ever want to get coffee, like I didn't say it this way, but like, I have a friend crush on you. I would love to just like connect and get to know you. And like now, I mean, yeah, when we talk about my work, it feels even more personal because she's had her own struggles with mental health. And so anyone who connects in that way, it feels even deeper.
Yeah, so you're just really not afraid to put yourself out there with the community. I mean, you show up to events solo, which is so not all the time, but like it sounds like you did at this Poetic Underground and this Anchor Island event.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel with people that are trying to get connected in a community that they might be intimidated by or just are memorized by, you just have to do it. You have to go and put yourself out there. And that's something that is admirable that you do.
Thank you. I think I do it scared. I think that's what people don't realize. A lot of times I do it scared and I feel anxious and nervous and like no one's going to talk to me and no one's going to like me. Like all of those thoughts that aren't true. But I do it anyway. And then 9.9 times out of 10, it turns out to be great. And you meet at least one person. And I've made great friends in Kansas City this way. So yeah, like if you don't have a friend who wants to go to that thing you want to go to, even if you're nervous, even if you're scared, go anyway. And you just never know what could come out of that.
That's so cool. So when did you first connect with Melissa? Like the coffee date?
Ooh, probably. So I saw her for the first time in February. It was probably a couple months later. It was probably in the spring that I finally was like, okay, I've run into you like half a dozen times now. I feel like you'll at least know my face and be like, oh, I think I've seen you somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, when I reached out.
And that's so cool to see the progression of a friendship because at the book launch, my book launch, didn't you guys come together? Like you guys rode together?
Yes,
so that's so cool just to see that now you're driving to events together. Now you have a friend to go to events with. You know what I mean? That's a beautiful, perfect connection.
Yeah.
So you guys connected deeply over your book, it sounds like, or the topic of your book. Can you tell everyone, the audience, about your book and kind of just like a synopsis?
Yes. So it's kind of a mini memoir in that it doesn't cover my entire life, but a fraction of my life. It's the immediate before, during, and after being diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder at the very end of 2017, beginning of 2018. And it was a lot of chaos that led to that diagnosis. I was in my first job after journalism school in Wichita. I'd spent, 2-ish years building this whole life out there. And when I got sick, your behavior changes, the way you talk to people changes. It just kind of blew everything up. Like I lost friends, I lost my apartment, I couldn't work anymore. It was just crazy. Like my life was burning down, at least the life that I knew then. So I came home and I had an experience of hallucinating in the middle of the night. And I detail that in the book. And that's when I woke up my parents and said, like, you need to take me to the hospital. There was some part of me that was still healthy enough to recognize that what I was experiencing was not real and that I needed help immediately. So I went to the hospital. It was weeks and months, if not years, of recovery after that. And all of that is captured in the book, which is called You Can Go to Hell and Back. And I put the emphasis there because that's the point, is like, I went through hell. I made it to the other side. You can too.
You can hit the bottom and you can go up.
Yeah.
You don't have to stay there.
Exactly.
Do you feel that this book, writing it, helped you get through some of the things that you were going through? Or did you write it when you had already kind of gone over the hill, gone over the mountain of the hardships?
I think I was through the toughest parts by the time I started writing the book. And it's interesting. I have a piece in the book where I talk about folks who have said, write from your scars, not an open wound. But you can't totally do that when you live with a chronic illness.
Mm.
Like when you live with a mental illness that won't be cured, you're always living with it. Even when you're more stable, even when it's better managed, it's still there. So if I were to not share my story just because it's never going to be totally over, we wouldn't have this thing that's connected with so many people. So while, yes, I think the toughest parts I was through and I was in a pretty stable place when I wrote it, it'll never be like 100% mental illness free. So I think I still accurately captured what that time was like. And I think I even say in the book, like, it's not a happy ending. It's the end of a sentence, and there are more sentences and many, many more chapters to go.
Mm.
So this is part of my story, but not the end of my story.
Mm. That I love the piece of whoever gave you that advice of write from the scars and not an open wound. I relate to that a lot because I was writing my book from open wounds to start.
Mm-hmm.
And then my editor was like, okay, if you want to give anyone hope, you have to like start writing a little bit more of enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a really big struggle to write about the happy days or the enlightenment because I was still constantly struggling with the issues I was facing. Like I wasn't fully over it.
Mm.
And so I almost had to take space away from trying to like write for a book or, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because you almost have to get over the hump, let it heal, and then go back and write about it. You can still continue to write throughout that process. I feel like that is a really healthy way to get through some of those things that are really just itching at you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But to formulate it and like make it a published piece, you almost need space from the time you wrote. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do think having space allows for perspective
Mm-hmm.
that when you're fully in the thick of it, you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, for me, it was kind of a dance of like, I was far enough removed from the worst of it that I felt comfortable reflecting back without it like injuring me in any way. Like it didn't feel like I was re-traumatizing myself going through stuff. But I also, it's something I live with every day. So I still felt like connected to it.
I feel this way about my book. I'm curious if you feel the same. That my book does feel like closed, shut. It's on the shelf, existing for other people, but not necessarily for me anymore because I don't necessarily identify with all those things I wrote when I was going through all the things. And sometimes it feels better for me not to constantly revisit because I like to move forward. Like I'm excited to write something new. Like I'm sure how this exhibit felt for you. Like you're writing something new.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you feel that way about your book that you love your poems, you love your book, but they almost exist for other people? Or do you still feel like this book is so me, it'll always be ever going? Like there'll be other parts to this book to write? Or does it feel like a closed?
I feel like this is a closed chapter. Like I captured what I wanted and needed to capture. The process of writing it was for me. The process of publishing it was for the rest of the world, for whoever chooses to read it.
Totally.
yeah, like it doesn't feel like it belongs to just me anymore. It
Mhm.
belongs to whoever chooses to read it and whatever they get out of it.
Yeah. I always say, like, having the book out and published, you're like, "Poof, gone, bye."
Yeah.
Like, "See you later, book. Fun knowing you."
Yeah.
But you're good about going out and reading it and everything. I'm trying to do more of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like it was hard when it was out there because I'm like, I just want something new now.
Yeah.
But you have to kind of hold on to it for a little bit.
Yeah.
So it can really see a day that it deserves, see a
Mm-hmm.
life that it deserves, because no one's going to really push it like you.
Yeah.
So before we dive in, we're going to end on you reading.
Okay.
But tell me about the process of that published piece, of like how you feel like you got it out there, because I know that for you sold out multiple times of this book. And so what was that process of like of you getting it out there in the world? How did you go about it?
So my experience is, I think, kind of one of a kind. I reached out to my publisher, MG Salazar from La Resistencia Press, who I published with, kind of on a whim in 2021 in like August or September, because I knew they ran a small press, they'd published their own work. And so I was writing, and I wanted to share it, but I didn't know how. I was kind of looking for like, are there magazines I should submit to? Should I start a blog? I don't know. So I just went to MG and described everything I was writing about. And they were the one who told me, I think you're writing a book. I think you don't realize that you have a collection of work that is a book. And without reading the manuscript, because they'd worked with me before through my journalistic work, they're like, I know you can write. And the way you're talking about this, I can tell you've got something. I would publish your book if you wanted to make it a book. Which, like, this
That's
does
so
not happen.
cool.
Yeah, this does not happen.
So almost someone told you like there's a book in you and you need to write it.
Yes. And so I took a couple weeks to like really think about, am I ready to share this in that way, share these stories, share these pieces? And I went for it. I said yes. It's one of the coolest things I've ever done. We sold out of 2 printings. We're currently out of print, but I'm probably going to be applying for some grants to make that happen again, to print more.
Amazing.
I'm working on the audiobook. So my goal is to have that out in the world by the time we hit the 2-year anniversary of when the book
that'll
dropped.
be perfect.
Yeah, so that's October of this year. So
have
my goal
you
is
started
to
to read it yet?
Yes, I've done like my first couple passes. Some I like, some I don't. So I'm just like taking notes and reevaluating before going back into record again. Like, okay, this is what I liked about when I read this piece. This I want to do with a different tone or a different inflection on this piece. And I'm actually using the podcasting equipment and studio at the church across the street.
Amazing.
Because they're just letting me use it since I'm on the board.
Why not?
Why not?
Okay, that's so funny. I'm actually going through the process of my audiobook too.
Fabulous.
And I have found 2 little errors. And I'm like, oh, so that's my advice for anyone going through and writing a book is read it out loud before you really go, or at least have your editor do it. I don't think my editor did that, because that's really how you can find the tiniest errors, is reading it out loud, because then you're like, oh, that sounds weird.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have. One of my things was it was the last word in a poem, and it was needed to be begin and not began. And then when I read it, I heard that sound difference, and I was like, oh, dang it.
Yeah.
This needed to be a grammar fix. ASAP.
Reading and writing are different though. Like,
yeah.
Like the experience of reading words on a page in your head and just looking at them and then writing them is totally different than like hearing it out loud.
Yeah.
So I think that's normal.
That's my advice though for people.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Because you really find it. And I'm sure people wouldn't there's been hundreds of people that have read it that haven't mentioned it. And I'm curious, like, did anyone find that?
I mean, I don't even know what you're talking about, if that makes you feel any better. And I loved your book, reading it. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so let's now have you read
From the book?
Yeah, and we can end here on this beautiful. I can hold your mic for you.
Yes,
that's
please.
What I do.
That would be
this
helpful.
part.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, my hand was falling asleep a little bit.
Well, also, you don't have 3 hands.
That's true.
So,
all right, I want to read something. We talked about the writing from my wounds thing, so maybe I should just read that piece. Okay, we're gonna get there. Okay. This is writing from my wounds from You Can Go to Hell and Back. Write from your scars, not an open wound. Share from your heart, not your hurt. Words from wise women whose work I admire, but their guidance would keep me silent forever. When your hurt is chronic, when your wounds won't heal, where are you supposed to turn? Inward, where your invisible disability vacillates between laying dormant and consuming you whole? Inward, where your incurable illness likes to hide until you're still, calm, content, so it can punch through your peace, the peace you work so hard to protect? No, I will not turn everything inward until I'm twisted into a pretzel. I can never beat my inner beasts out of existence, merely into submission. I do not live with skeletons. I do not live with ghosts. My secret is my shadow, visible when I expose it to the light. If I never write from my open wound, no one will ever know it's there, and maybe no one will ever see that they have one too. If I never share from my hurt, no one will ever know it can be numbed, and maybe no one will ever see that their own pain can be quieted. There are some cuts that never scab over, some parasites that never die. And just because I am the chosen host, I should pretend as though all is well? No. So come, listen to the words I speak, read the poetry I write, and know they come from someone who is open, wide open, and ready to share my demons so others with demons know they're not alone.
So beautiful. My secret is my shadow. Yes, that's where I'm snapping at right now. I guess I could have snapped with my left hand.
That's okay.
That's my snaps. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Thank you.
And telling us more about your story. How can people get connected to you?
They should follow me on Instagram at christina.santiago.tv. I'm also Christina Santiago on Facebook. Find me on social media.
Yay.
I'd love to connect.
We will. You will connect.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, the lights just shut off on us.
So if I stand and walk around, That's probably
perfect, though. Oh my gosh. Mic drop on that.
There we go.
Okay, I'm going to give you a hug. Thank you again so much.
This was so fun.
You did awesome. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Leave me a review on your favorite listening channel, Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. I'd love to hear from you. Always with love, A.